The Syndoria galaxy stretched across the cosmos like a vast, glittering web, its countless stars forming pathways between dozens of allied worlds. From the magnificent spires of the Central Council chambers to the distant outpost planets, a loose alliance governed this sprawling expanse. Beneath the veneer of civilization and advanced technology, however, existed a cruder reality. The arenas where warriors from across the galaxy came to prove their worth. Rowan L. Cross stood alone on the observation deck of the transport vessel, watching as they approached the massive orbital station above Alterion. The central hub of the Sindorian Alliance boasted the most famous, or infamous, arena in the known systems. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. Tall, lean, with eyes that had seen too much for someone barely into his third decade. The deep scar running across his left cheekbone served as a permanent reminder of his past. 20 minutes to docking, the ship's AI announced. All passengers prepare for arrival procedures. Rowan's hand instinctively moved to the small metal emblem pinned to his collar. The last remnant of his homeland, a fractured world called Terralus. 10 years ago, the Alliance had abandoned his people during the Void Scourge outbreak, declaring the planet a containment zone. His family, his home, everything had been sacrificed to political expediency. He'd escaped with nothing but the clothes on his back and a burning determination to someday restore his world's honor. That path had led him here, to Alterion, and to what many would call an impossible goal. Looking for glory in the arena? An older man sidled up beside him, leaning casually against the railing. His face was weathered, bearing the marks of someone who'd been in his share of battles. "You've got that look about you." "Just looking for opportunity," Rowan replied, keeping his gaze fixed on the approaching station. The man chuckled. "Opportunity? At Alterion? The only opportunities here are for the Undertakers." He extended a hand. "Maddox Kern, I scout talent for the lower circuits." Rowan shook the offer hand. "Rowan L. Cross. Well, Rowan L. Cross, let me save you some trouble. Whatever you're planning, whatever grand ambitions brought you here, reconsider. I've seen 100 like you. Most don't make it past their first match. I'm not here for the regular circuits," Rowan said quietly. Something in his tone must have given him away, because Maddox's expression shifted from amusement to disbelief. "Please tell me you're not one of those fools chasing the Locke legend." Rowan's silence was answer enough. "Gods above, you are." Maddox shook his head. "Irena Locke doesn't fight challengers. She executes them. There's a reason they call her Death's Embrace. 27 consecutive victories, not a single opponent left standing. Some never walked again. I've studied her fights," Rowan said. "I know what I'm facing." Maddox laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Studied her fights? Boy, her movements are too fast for most recording equipment. Half the time, spectators don't even see what happened until the replay." He leaned closer. "And that's not even the craziest part of your suicide mission. They say she's bound by some ancient pact. She said the one who defeated her could do anything. Now she calls me master. That's what they whisper. But no one's ever proven it because no one's ever beaten her." The overhead lighting shifted to a pulsing blue as the ship maneuvered into its docking position. "I appreciate the concern," Rowan said, gathering his modest pack. "But I didn't come this far to walk away." "Your funeral," Maddox muttered. "Though if you survive longer than 30 seconds, I might reconsider my scouting assessment." As passengers began moving toward the exit ports, Rowan felt a strange calm settle over him. For years, he had trained for this moment. While others saw a death wish, he saw his only chance. If the rumors were true, defeating Irena Locke would grant him the power and influence he needed to finally help his people. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud that resonated through the ship's hull. Rowan glanced once more at the sprawling station. Somewhere within those walls, the woman called Death's Embrace waited. And soon, he would face her. Alterion's central arena dominated the station's core, a massive coliseum capable of seating nearly 100,000 spectators. Built in the classical style of ancient Earth, but crafted from reinforced tritanium and energy fields, it represented the pinnacle of entertainment in the Sindorian Alliance. Rowan made his way through the bustling lower concourse, surrounded by vendors hawking everything from weapons modifications to betting algorithms. Holographic displays feature upcoming matches, stats on favored fighters, and odds calculations that shifted in real time. The scent of exotic foods mingled with the metallic undertone of the station's recycled air. Registration for standard bouts is that way. A heavily augmented security officer pointed without looking up from his console. Medical screening is mandatory. I'm not here for standard registration, Rowan said, placing a data chip on the counter. I've come to issue a direct challenge. The officer finally looked up, cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. Direct challenge? To whom? Arena Locke. The background noise seemed to dim as nearby conversations paused. The officer stared at him, his organic eye widening slightly. That's not funny, kid. I'm not joking. The officer's expression shifted from annoyance to something resembling pity. Look, we get one of you every couple of months. Some hotshot who thinks they've found her weakness. It always ends the same way, with a body bag. I understand the risks, Rowan said, pushing the data chip closer. The challenge protocol is clear. Any registered fighter can issue a direct challenge to another. Registration doesn't mean you have a death wish, the officer muttered, but he picked up the chip and inserted it into his console. Name's Rowan L. Cross? From Terralus. His eyebrows raised. That quarantined wasteland. Rowan stiffened. The challenge protocol doesn't discriminate based on planet of origin. No, but the odds makers will. The officer sighed and tapped a series of commands. Phoenix. Challenge logged. You'll need to clear medical and submit your combat profile. But don't get your hopes up. She rejects most direct challenges, especially from unknowns. She won't reject mine, Rowan said with a certainty he didn't entirely feel. The officer gave him a long look. And why is that? Because I know something about her that others don't. It was a calculated gamble. Rowan had spent years piecing together fragments of information, studying every available recording of Arena's fights, analyzing the strange energy patterns that emanated from the chains she wore. Yeah, you and every other corpse-to-be. The officer waved him toward a side corridor. Medical screening is through there. Then report to challenge processing in Section 6. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I hope you know what you're doing. Rowan nodded and moved toward the medical section, ignoring the stares that followed him. The rumors would spread quickly now. Another fool challenging death's embrace. But he couldn't afford to care about public opinion. Too much was at stake. As he entered the sterile medical chamber, his mind drifted back to his mentor's words years ago. The greatest warriors aren't those with the fastest reflexes or the strongest arms, Rowan. They're the ones who see the patterns behind the chaos. Every fighter, no matter how skilled, creates patterns in their movements. Find a pattern, and you find their weakness. If Rowan's theory was correct, even Arena Locke had patterns. And if he could decipher them, he might have a chance, not just for victory, but for everything that came after. The medical scanner hummed to life, casting a blue light over his body. In less than 24 hours, he would either be dead or on his way to fulfilling the promise he'd made at his father's grave, to restore their world's honor and give their people a future. The Chamber of Challenge Acceptance was designed to intimidate. Carved from a single block of obsidian-like material with veins of luminescent blue running through it. The room was circular, with tiered seating rising steeply from a central platform. The Alliance Council representatives, one from each of the 12 core worlds, sat in silent judgment, their expressions ranging from bored to vaguely amused. In the center of the platform stood Rowan, dressed in the simple gray fighting attire provided to challengers. Across from him, the chamber doors parted. Arena Locke entered without fanfare, without introduction. She didn't need one. Her presence commanded attention immediately. Tall and powerfully built, with skin the color of burnished bronze and close-cropped silver hair that seemed to capture and reflect the room's light. Her eyes were what struck Rowan most. Deep violet, unnatural in their intensity, studying him with clinical detachment. The chains that wound around her forearms and disappeared beneath her fitted combat suit pulsed with a subtle blue energy that matched the veins in the chamber walls. "The challenge has been issued," intoned the lead counselor, an elderly woman with elaborate facial markings denoting her Persithian heritage. "Irena Locke, you have been challenged to combat by Rowan Elcross of Terralus. Do you accept or reject?" For several long moments, Irena said nothing, merely studying Rowan with those unsettling violet eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower than expected, with a strange resonant quality that seemed to echo slightly. "Why should I waste my time with this one?" She directed the question to the council, not deigning to address Rowan directly. "He is untested, unknown. His world is not even recognized by the Alliance anymore. The challenge protocol does not discriminate based on origin," the lead counselor replied, echoing Rowan's earlier words. "Then I reject on the basis of qualification," Irena said dismissively. "He has no standing." Now was the moment Rowan had prepared for. Before the council could respond, he stepped forward. "The energy signature of your chains," he said clearly, his voice carrying through the chamber. "It's not Sindorian technology. It's much older, pre-Alliance. It matches fragments found in the void temples on Nyx 9. A ripple of murmurs spread through the council members. Irena's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed fractionally. "And what would a boy from a quarantined world know of such things?" she asked, acknowledging him directly for the first time. "I know that those chains aren't just weapons. They're a binding." Rowan took another step forward. "I know the legends say you're bound by an ancient pact." She said the one who defeated her could do anything. Now she calls me master. What I don't know is whether that's your choice or your curse. Silence fell over the chamber. The council members exchanged glances. This was clearly not the usual challenge proceeding. Irena's lips curved into something not quite a smile. "You've done your research, Terralian. But knowledge alone won't save you in the arena." "Then you accept?" Rowan pressed. She considered him for a moment longer, then inclined her head slightly. "I accept. Tomorrow, Central Arena, Apex Hour. Come prepared to die quickly. It's the most mercy I can offer." "The challenge is accepted," the lead counselor declared. "Let the record show that both parties have agreed to standard combat protocols. The match will proceed as scheduled." As the formalities concluded, Rowan and Irena were ushered towards separate exits. Just before she disappeared through the doorway, Irena paused and looked back at him. "You think you've found my pattern," she said, her voice pitched so only he could hear. "But the pattern is the trap." Before Rowan could respond, she was gone, leaving him with an unsettling feeling that despite all his preparation, he might have drastically underestimated what awaited him. Apex Hour at Altarian's Central Arena coincided with the station's synchronized noon, when a massive artificial sun at the center of the habitat ring reached its highest point. The symbolism wasn't lost on Rowan as he stood in the preparation chamber, methodically stretching each muscle group. "Final equipment check," announced the arena attendant, a thin man with the emotionless efficiency of someone who'd seen too many fighters walk out and never return. "Standard combat suit. No enhancements detected. Approved hand-to-hand combat gloves. No weapons, no augmentations." He made a final note on his tablet. "You've declined pain suppressants?" "Yes," Rowan confirmed. Pain suppressants dulled reflexes. Against Irena Locke, even milliseconds could matter. "Your funeral," the attendant shrugged, the second person to use that phrase since Rowan's arrival. 5 minutes to entry. Left alone, Rowan closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Anxiety narrows vision. Fear creates blind spots. The calm mind sees everything." The chamber speakers crackled to life with the announcer's voice, already working the crowd into a frenzy. Outside, nearly 100,000 spectators roared with anticipation. The betting pools had been wild, with odds stacked astronomically against him, a fact that had allowed Rowan to place a modest sum that would yield a fortune if he somehow prevailed. "It's time," the attendant called, returning to the chamber. "Arena's ready." Rowan opened his eyes and nodded. As the massive doors began to slide apart, He stepped forward into the blinding light. The arena stretched before him, a perfect circle of black granite embedded with the same luminescent blue veins that had adorned the council chamber. The crowd's noise hit him like a physical force, a wall of sound that seemed to press against his skin. Viewing platforms floated at various heights, carrying wealthier spectators and dignitaries. Massive screens displayed his image, alongside stats that emphasized his unknown status and humble origins. Directly opposite him, another set of doors parted, and Irena Locke emerged. She wore the same fitted combat suit as the previous day, but now the chains around her arms glowed more brightly, pulsing in a rhythm that matched the thunderous drumbeat accompanying her entrance. The crowd's reaction to her was different. Not just excitement, but a kind of reverent awe mixed with bloodlust. They didn't just want to see combat. They wanted to see destruction. They met at the center of the arena, where the chief arbiter, a tall, spindly being from one of the methane-breathing worlds, hovered above the ground in a specialized environment suit. "The rules are simple," the arbiter announced, voice amplified and translated simultaneously. "Combat continues until submission, incapacitation, or death. No outside interference. No weapons beyond those that are part of your natural or permanent augmentation." The arbiter's gaze lingered on Irena's chains. "Begin at the signal." As the arbiter retreated, Rowan and Irena stood facing each other, mere meters apart. Up close, she was even more imposing, taller than him by several centimeters, with a physical presence that seemed to bend the very air around her. "Last chance to forfeit," she said quietly, her voice somehow carrying despite the crowd's noise. "You've made your point. You've faced death's embrace. Walk away while you still can." "I can't," Rowan replied simply. Something flickered in her violet eyes, perhaps respect, perhaps pity. "Then remember, you chose this end." The signal rang out, a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through the arena floor. Before the sound had even faded, Irena moved. She was faster than the recordings had shown, faster than Rowan had calculated. One moment, she stood 3 meters away. The next, her fist was arcing toward his face, trailing blue energy like a comet's tail. Only years of trained reflexes saved him as he twisted aside, feeling the heat of her attack as it passed his cheek by millimeters. But that was just the beginning. Irena fought like no opponent Rowan had ever faced, each movement flowing seamlessly into the next, each strike immediately followed by another from an unexpected angle. The chains around her arms left trails of energy that briefly distorted the air, making it harder to track her movements. Rowan found himself entirely on the defensive, blocking and evading with increasing desperation. A glancing blow to his shoulder sent him stumbling backward, the impact reverberating down to his bones. The crowd roared its approval, sensing blood. "Is this all the challenge you offer?" Irena asked, circling him. "Perhaps you should have studied more." Rowan didn't waste breath on a reply. Instead, he focused, watching not just her movements, but the flow of energy through those mysterious chains. His mentor had taught him that even the most chaotic systems contain patterns. He just needed to find Irena's. She came at him again, this time with a sweeping kick that would have broken his leg had it connected. Rowan jumped over it, finally launching his first counterattack, a strike aimed at her midsection. Irena blocked it effortlessly, but something changed in her expression. Surprise, perhaps, that he had created an opening at all. For several intense minutes, they exchanged blows, Rowan gradually adapting to her speed and power. He took hits, a punch to the ribs that definitely cracked something, a strike to his thigh that nearly collapsed his leg, but he remained standing, analyzing, learning. The patterns were there, hidden beneath layers of skill and the disorienting energy of her chains. Irena favored attacks that flowed from left to right. When she used the chains offensively, they always pulsed brighter a fraction of a second before. Her breathing, nearly imperceptible, hitched slightly before her most powerful combinations. Midway through the fight, Rowan finally saw it. The complete pattern, the rhythm beneath her seemingly random assault. And in that pattern lay the gap, the millisecond of vulnerability when her chains reset their energy cycle. The next time she came at him with a devastating combination, Rowan didn't just defend. He counted the beats of her attack. 1, 2, 3, and on the fourth, instead of retreating, he stepped into her guard. The crowd gasped. It was suicide, moving toward death's embrace rather than away. But Rowan had timed it perfectly. For that brief instant, as her chains recharged, there was a window. He struck, not with power but with precision, targeting a nerve cluster near her collarbone. Irena's eyes widened in genuine shock. For the first time in the fight, she stumbled back. Ow! She began, but Rowan was already pressing his advantage, striking again during the next reset cycle. This time, he targeted her knee, causing her leg to buckle momentarily. The crowd's roar changed tenor. What had been bloodlust became disbelief. No one had ever seen Irena lock forced into retreat. Fury darkened her features. The chains around her arms flared with blinding intensity, their energy pattern changing, becoming more erratic. She charged forward with renewed ferocity, her attacks coming faster, harder. Rowan took a devastating hit to the jaw that sent him sprawling. He tasted blood, his vision swimming. The crowd was chanting now, sensing the end. But as he struggled back to his feet, he realized something crucial. Irena's new pattern, born of anger, was even more predictable than before. Emotion had compromised her perfect technique. She stalked toward him, chains blazing like blue fire. "Enough games," she growled. "This ends now." As she launched what was clearly meant to be a finishing blow, Rowan didn't try to block or evade. Instead, he stepped into her attack at precisely the right moment, his hands moving in a complex pattern that his father had taught him, a forgotten technique from Teralis that targeted not the body, but the energy flowing through it. His fingers brushed against Irena's chains at exactly the moment they began their reset cycle. For an instant that seemed to stretch into eternity, the blue energy wavered, disrupted by his touch. Irena froze, her expression a mask of shock and something else. A momentary glimpse of relief, quickly buried beneath rage. Taking advantage of her hesitation, Rowan executed a perfect throw, using Irena's own momentum against her. For the first time in 27 matches, Death's embrace hit the arena floor. The silence that followed was absolute. 100,000 spectators held their breath as Irena lock lay on her back, staring up at the ceiling in apparent disbelief. Rowan stood over her, his own breathing ragged, blood trickling from his split lip. "Yield," he said quietly. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she sat up. The chains around her arms had dimmed to a faint glow. When she looked at Rowan, her expression was unreadable. "You've found the pattern," she said, her voice carrying in the silence. "After all this time, you actually found it." The crowd remained hushed, witnessing something unprecedented. Irena Locke rose to her feet with fluid grace, despite the damage Rowan had inflicted. She stood before him, violet eyes searching his face as if seeing him truly for the first time. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, she inclined her head in a formal bow. "I yield," she announced clearly. "The match is yours, Rowan Elcross of Teralis." The arbiter hovering nearby seemed as stunned as everyone else. After a moment's delay, they raised Rowan's arm. Victory to the challenger. The arena erupted, the crowd's reaction a mix of disbelief, outrage, and wild excitement. The betting systems would be in chaos. Fortunes had been made and lost in an instant. But Rowan barely registered the noise. His attention remained fixed on Irena, who had straightened from her bow and now regarded him with an intense, evaluating gaze. "You know what this means?" she said, her voice pitched for his ears alone. "I've heard the legends," Rowan replied cautiously. Her lips curved into a humorless smile. "Legends often contain truths. You've won more than just a match today, Terralian." She extended her hand, an oddly formal gesture amid the chaos. "The pact is sealed. She who is defeated calls you master now." As Rowan hesitantly clasped her offered hand, the chains around Irena's arms flared briefly, sending a shock of blue energy through their joined grip. It didn't hurt. Instead, it felt like a current passing between them, connecting them in some fundamental way. "What have I done?" Rowan murmured. "Changed everything," Irena replied simply. "For better or worse, we're bound now, and many will seek to destroy us both because of it." Before Rowan could ask what she meant, arena officials surrounded them, separating them for the official ceremonies. As Irena was led away, she glanced back once, her violet eyes holding a warning that sent a chill down Rowan's spine despite his victory. He had won the match, but something told him the real battle was just beginning. Rowan's victory celebration was short-lived. After the ceremonial presentation of the winner's medallion and the transfer of his substantial winnings, he was escorted to a recovery suite that felt more like a detention cell. The room was luxurious enough, with a healing bed, automated medical systems, and high-end amenities, but the door was locked from the outside. He sat on the edge of the bed, wincing as the medical scanner worked its way across his battered body. 3 cracked ribs, a hairline fracture in his jaw, extensive soft tissue damage throughout his torso and limbs. He'd sustained more damage than he'd realized during the fight, adrenaline masking the worst of it. The door slid open without warning. 2 figures entered, a stern-faced woman in the formal black and silver of the Alliance Council, and behind her, surprisingly, Irena Locke. "Rowan Elcross," the woman said without preamble. "I am Counselor Vega. We need to discuss what happened today." Rowan eyed them both warily. "The match was conducted according to protocol. I won fairly." "The match is not in question," Counselor Vega said dismissively. "It's what comes after that concerns us." She gestured to Irena. "She has informed us of the binding that has occurred." Irena stood silently, her chains now concealed beneath a long-sleeved formal tunic. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes never left Rowan's. "I've only heard rumors," Rowan said carefully, "that she would serve whoever defeated her." Counselor Vega's laugh was sharp and without humor. "Serve? Is that what you think this is? Some fairy tale where you've won a powerful servant?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself involved with, Terralian." "Then enlighten me," Rowan said, struggling to keep his tone level. The counselor glanced at Irena, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Irena Locke is not what she appears to be," Vega began. "The council has managed her situation for nearly 2 centuries. She is a containment vessel, a living seal for something that predates our alliance by millennia." Rowan looked at Irena, who met his gaze steadily. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Irena said, speaking for the first time since entering, "that I am bound to you now, but not in the way stories suggest. The chains you disrupted in the arena are not mere weapons. They are a control mechanism, both amplifying and restraining what lies within me." "The Key of Realms," Rowan said quietly, recalling fragments of ancient texts he'd studied during his research. "That's what you contain." Both women stiffened, surprise flashing across their faces. "You are well informed for an outworlder," Vega said, suspicion evident in her tone. "How does someone from a quarantined planet know of such things?" "My father was an archaeologist before the Void Scourge. He specialized in pre-alliance artifacts. His note survived, even if he didn't." Rowan shifted his gaze to Irena. "The patterns in your chains, they match glyphs from the Void Temples. I recognized them from his sketches." Irena's expression softened slightly. "Your father was perceptive. The key is indeed what I contain, or rather what I am a part of. It's an ancient power source, created by those who came before the Alliance. In the wrong hands, it could destabilize the fabric of reality itself. For generations," Vega continued, "we've maintained a system. Irena serves as both guardian and prisoner of the key. The binding spell requires her to acknowledge a master, someone strong enough to defeat her, someone who might be worthy of controlling such power. The Council has ensured that no one ever achieved this. Until today." "You let me win?" Rowan asked Irena, anger flaring. "No," she replied firmly. "You won through skill and perception. I fought to my full capability, as I always do. That's the requirement of the binding. Only genuine defeat activates the transfer. So what happens now? Rowan asked, looking between them. Now, Vega said grimly, you have a choice to make. The council requires you to relinquish your claim on Arena. Release her from the binding, and you will be compensated generously. Enough to rebuild a life anywhere in the Alliance. Perhaps even enough to petition for aid for your homeworld. The offer was everything Rowan had come for: wealth, influence, the chance to help Terrorless. Yet something felt wrong about the entire situation. And if I refuse, he asked. Vega's expression hardened. Then you become a threat to Alliance security. I don't think I need to elaborate on what happens to such threats. She's threatening you with assassination, Arena clarified bluntly. The Council cannot allow someone outside their control to have access to the key. They've eliminated potential masters before. You seem remarkably calm about this, Rowan noted. Arena's eyes flashed with something. Anger, perhaps, or determination. I've been bound for 2 centuries. I've seen many things, endured more. What happens next is your choice, Master. The title sent an uncomfortable shiver down Rowan's spine. Don't call me that. It's what you are now, she replied. Until you release me or die, the binding holds. Counselor Vega cleared her throat impatiently. Your decision, El Cross? Will you release her and accept our offer? Or must we consider you an enemy of Alliance security? Rowan looked at Arena, searching her face for some clue to what she wanted. Her expression remained carefully neutral, but something in her eyes, a flicker of what might have been hope, made his decision. I need time to think, he said finally. This is not a simple matter. You have until tomorrow morning, Vegas said sharply. The council reconvenes at dawn. You will provide your answer then. She turned to leave, then paused. Consider carefully, Terralian. Your people have already suffered enough. Don't add to their burden with a foolish choice. After the counselor departed, Arena remained. For a long moment, neither spoke. She's right about one thing, Arena said eventually. If you refuse, they will try to kill you. The council has guarded the secret of the key for generations. They won't surrender it easily. Why are you telling me this? Rowan asked. Don't you want to be released back to their control? Arena moved to the window, gazing out at the artificial skyline of Alterion. What I want ceased to matter long ago. She turned to face him. But since you ask, no. The council's management has been a different kind of prison. They've used me as their enforcer, their executioner. Anyone who threatened their power, who asked too many questions about the pre-alliance artifacts. I was sent to eliminate them. Like the arena fights. Those were for show, to maintain the legend, to ensure that when someone did finally defeat me, it would be someone exceptional. She studied him. They never imagined it would be someone from a quarantined world with no political connections. What would happen, Rowan asked carefully, if I neither released you nor bowed to the council? War, she said simply. They would hunt us across the galaxy. They would leverage every resource to reclaim the key. A faint smile touched her lips. But they would not find it easy. The binding gives us advantages. What kind of advantages? Instead of answering directly, Arena approached him. May I? She asked, gesturing to his injuries. When Rowan nodded, she placed her palm gently against his broken ribs. The chains beneath her sleeve glowed faintly, and a surge of warmth spread through his torso. The pain vanished instantly. The key's energy can heal, she explained. It can also destroy. It can open paths between worlds, create shields impenetrable to conventional weapons. In the old texts, they called it the power that shapes reality. Rowan touched his side, finding no trace of the injury. And this power is inside you. I am its vessel, she corrected. Its guardian. Its prisoner. The ancient ones who created it feared its potential for destruction. They bound it to a living soul, mine, to ensure it would have conscience, judgment. How old are you? Rowan asked suddenly. Arena's smile was sad. Older than I appear. The key preserves its vessel. But I've been in the council service for only 2 centuries, since they discovered me in the ruins of Nyx 9. Rowan stood and paced the room, mind racing. Everything he'd come for was within reach. The council's offer would give him the means to help his people. Yet something about their urgency, their fear, suggested there was more to this story. If I were to keep this binding, he said slowly, what would that mean? What would you expect of me as your master? The word still felt wrong on his tongue. The binding doesn't make me your slave, Irena clarified. It makes me your guardian, your advisor, your weapon when needed. I retain my will, my judgment, but I am bound to protect you, to serve your greater purpose. She paused. Assuming you have one. I came here to win enough to help Terrorless, Rowan admitted. My people are dying. The quarantine was supposed to be temporary, but the Alliance has abandoned them. Irena considered this a worthy cause. But ask yourself, if the Council has lied about me, about the key, what else might they be hiding? Perhaps there's more to your world's fate than you know. The implication hung in the air between them. Before Rowan could respond, his room's communication panel chimed. Security notification, announced an automated voice. Per Council directive, this facility will be locked down until dawn. All personnel remain at stations. All visitors remain in quarters. Rowan and Irena exchanged glances. They're not waiting until morning, Irena said quietly. This is how it begins, gradually restricting movement, isolating us, then strike teams in the night. We need to leave, Rowan concluded. Now. Indeed. Irena moved to the door, placed her palm against the lock. The chains beneath her sleeve glowed, and the security system sparked briefly before the door slid open. The binding gives me certain overrides, especially when protecting my master. Don't call me that, Rowan said again, but he was already gathering his few possessions. What would you prefer? She asked, checking the corridor outside. My name. Just use my name. She glanced back at him, the faintest hint of amusement in her violet eyes. As you wish, Rowan. But the binding remains, whatever words we use. They moved swiftly through the corridors, avoiding the main passages. Irena led with confidence, seeming to know instinctively which routes would be least monitored. When they encountered a security patrol, she pulled Rowan into a maintenance alcove, her body pressed against his as the guards passed by. The docking bays will be watched, she whispered once the danger had passed. But there are other ways off this station, such as the Council maintains private shuttles for emergencies. I know the access codes. I've used them often enough on there. Missions. The bitterness in her voice wasn't lost on Rowan. You're really not loyal to them, are you? My loyalty was never freely given, she replied. It was part of the arrangement. They maintain the secret of what I am, and in return, I serve their interests. Now, my loyalty belongs to you by the ancient binding. I don't want blind loyalty, Rowan said as they continued through the maze of corridors. If we do this, if we run, I need to know you're doing it because you believe it's right, not because some magical chains force you to. Irena stopped abruptly, turning to face him. There is no separating what I want from what the binding compels. But know this, in 2 centuries, you are the first master who has asked what I want. That alone tells me more about you than any words could. A nearby security alert interrupted the moment. Automated announcements began echoing through the station. Attention, all personnel. Security breach in Visitor Sector 12. All unidentified persons will be detained. This is not a drill. They've discovered we're gone, Irena said, grabbing Rowan's arm. This way. They ran through increasingly narrow maintenance passages, descending deeper into the station's infrastructure. The sleek, polished surfaces of the public areas gave way to utilitarian metal grating and exposed conduits. The air grew warmer, heavy with the scent of recycling systems and machinery. The Council's emergency dock is through here, Irena said, gesturing to a heavy security door. It requires both biometric authentication and command codes. Can you override it? Not this one. It's isolated from the central systems specifically to prevent what I did to your room. She examined the panel thoughtfully. But the binding gives me other options. Irena placed both hands against the door. The chains beneath her sleeves began to glow, brighter than Rowan had ever seen them. The metal around her fingers started to warp, growing malleable like heated wax. With a sound like tearing fabric, She pulled the door apart, creating an opening just large enough for them to slip through. "That will set off more alarms," she warned. "We need to hurry." Beyond the door lay a small hangar containing 3 sleek shuttles, each bearing the Alliance Council insignia. Irena headed directly for the smallest of the 3. "This one has the least tracking systems," she explained, placing her palm against the entry pad. The shuttle's ramp extended smoothly, and the best stealth capabilities. As they boarded, emergency klaxons began blaring throughout the station. Red warning lights bathed the hangar in an ominous glow. "Can you fly this thing?" Rowan asked as they entered the shuttle's compact cabin. "I've piloted every vessel in the Alliance fleet at some point," Irena replied, sliding into the pilot's seat. Her fingers danced across the controls with practiced ease. One benefit of a very long life. You acquire many skills. The shuttle's engines hummed to life. Outside, the hangar's main doors remained firmly closed. "They've locked down the bay," Rowan observed, strapping himself into the co-pilot's seat. Irena's expression hardened. "Then we make our own exit." She redirected power to the shuttle's forward weapons systems, modest by military standards, but more than adequate for their current needs. A series of targeted energy pulses struck the hangar doors, creating a jagged hole just large enough for their small vessel to pass through. "Hold on," she warned, and slammed the thrusters to maximum. The shuttle shot forward, scraping against the edges of their improvised exit. Behind them, emergency force fields snapped into place, preventing the hangar's atmosphere from venting completely into space. Alarms blared on the shuttle's console as station defenses locked onto them. "Hang on," Irena called, hands moving in a blur across the controls. The shuttle spun and dove, evading the first volley of warning shots from Altarion's defense grid. "They're not trying to destroy us yet," she explained, executing another evasive maneuver. "Just disable. They want the key intact." "And me?" Rowan asked grimly. "You." They would happily sacrifice. The shuttle shuddered as a glancing blow struck their aft section. "We need to get out of their firing range. Can we jump to hyperspace this close to the station?" "Not without plotting a safe course. One miscalculation, and we could materialize inside a star." Irena's eyes narrowed in concentration as she guided them through a series of sharp turns. "I need 2 minutes to set coordinates." Those 2 minutes felt like an eternity as the shuttle bucked and weaved through increasingly accurate defensive fire. A direct hit sent electrical systems briefly offline before emergency backups engaged. "Where are we going?" Rowan asked, clinging to his seat as Irena executed a maneuver that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "Somewhere they won't expect," she replied cryptically. "Coordinates locked. Hyperspace jump in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched into lines around them as the shuttle jumped, leaving Alterion and the pursuing Alliance vessels behind. The violent shaking subsided, replaced by the subtle vibration of hyperspace travel. Rowan released his white-knuckled grip on the armrests. "That was close. It's just the beginning," Irena said, setting the autopilot and turning to face him. "The Council will deploy everything they have to find us. They can't afford to let the key remain outside their control." "You keep talking about this key as if it's separate from you," Rowan observed. "But you also said you're part of it." Irena pushed up her sleeve, revealing the chains that wound around her forearm. In the cabin's dim lighting, they pulsed with hypnotic blue energy, intricate symbols briefly appearing and fading within the glow. "The truth is complex," she said. "I was once human, like you. That was a very long time ago. The people you know as the Ancients, those who came before the Alliance, they created the Key of Realms as a power source for their civilization. But its energy proved too volatile, too dangerous." She traced one finger along the chain, following a particular pattern of symbols. When their civilization began to collapse, they feared what might happen if the key fell into the wrong hands. Their solution was to bind it to a living vessel, someone who could contain its power and exercise judgment in its use. "They chose you." Irena's smile held no humor. "I volunteered. I was young, idealistic. I believed in their vision of protecting creation from destruction." She lowered her sleeve. The binding transformed me. I am still myself, but also something more, the human consciousness that guides the key's power. And the chains, a physical manifestation of the binding spell. They appear differently to different observers. Some see chains, others see tattoos or armor. Their true nature exists partially outside normal reality. Rowan tried to process everything he was hearing. It sounded impossible, and yet he had witnessed Irena's powers firsthand. He had felt the energy that flowed between them when the binding transferred. So, when I defeated you, the ancients built in a safeguard, Irena explained. If I were ever overcome, if my judgment became compromised, control of the key would pass to whoever proved strong enough to defeat me. It ensures the key always has a worthy guardian. I'm hardly worthy, Rowan said quietly. I just wanted to help my planet. Perhaps that's precisely what makes you worthy, Irena suggested. You fought not for power or glory, but for others. Few who challenged me could claim the same. The shuttle's navigation system chimed, indicating they were approaching their destination. Irena returned to the controls, preparing for their exit from hyperspace. Where have you taken us? Rowan asked, looking at the unfamiliar star patterns on the navigation display. The Veil Nebula, she replied, a region avoided by most Alliance vessels due to electromagnetic disturbances that interfere with standard navigation systems. But within it lies a sanctuary of sorts, a place where those with secrets go to disappear. The shuttle dropped out of hyperspace into a breathtaking vista of swirling cosmic gases, blues, purples, and reds painted across the void in magnificent chaos. Hidden within the colorful nebula was a small planetoid, unremarkable except for the subtle glint of artificial structures on its surface. Welcome to Haven, Irena said as she guided their vessel toward a concealed docking port carved into the side of a crater. One of the few places in the galaxy the Council doesn't control, at least not directly. As they approached, a communication channel opened automatically. A gruff voice demanded, "Identify yourself and state your business." "Irena Locke," she replied calmly, "seeking sanctuary with a companion." A long pause followed. "Locke, the Council's weapon? What game are you playing?" "No game. I've been released from Council service. I can pay for safe harbor." Another pause, then payment first. Standard drop point. Irena reached beneath her tunic, retrieving a small metallic disc. She inserted it into a compartment in the control panel, which glowed briefly before a confirmation tone sounded. "Acceptable," the voice grudgingly acknowledged. "Base 7 is open. No weapons, no trackers. Any Council pursuit, and you're on your own." "Understood," Irena confirmed, guiding the shuttle toward the indicated bay. As they docked in the rough-hewn hangar carved from the planetoid's rock, Rowan gave her a questioning look. "You had resources ready? An escape plan?" "I've been a prisoner for 2 centuries," she replied simply. "Of course I had contingencies. I just never had the freedom to use them until now." The docking procedure completed with a slight shudder. As the external atmosphere readings stabilized, Irena rose from the pilot's seat. "Haven is not like Alterion," she warned. "It's governed by necessity and mutual. Interest, not laws. Keep close to me, speak little, and touch nothing unless I indicate it's safe. Many here have legitimate reasons to fear the Council, but others are simply dangerous." Rowan nodded, following her to the airlock. As the doors cycled open, they stepped into their first taste of freedom and into a new world of uncertainty. Haven lived up to its name, though not in ways most would find comforting. The settlement was built within and around a network of natural caverns, illuminated by a patchwork of salvaged lighting systems that cast everything in a perpetual twilight. The air carried a complex mixture of scents, machinery lubricant, exotic cooking spices, industrial chemicals, and the musty odor of too many bodies in too little space. The inhabitants were just as varied as the environment. Humans from dozens of worlds mingled with non-human species from across the galaxy. What they shared was wariness, each person moving with a heightened awareness of those accustomed to watching their backs. "This way," Irena murmured, guiding Rowan through narrow passages that wound deeper into the settlement. We need to find a secure place to rest and plan our next move. You seem familiar with this place, Rowan observed, noting how confidently she navigated the labyrinthine corridors. I've been here before, tracking council targets. A shadow crossed her face. Not my proudest missions. They passed through what appeared to be a marketplace, though unlike any Rowan had seen. Vendors sold everything from mundane supplies to items he suspected were highly illegal in Alliance space. Weapons modifications, identity forgery equipment, even what looked like biological implants floating in preservation fluid. Irena led him to a quieter section, where the carved passages gave way to actual structures, modular units stacked and connected in a haphazard architecture. She approached one such building, a 3-story structure with a faded sign identifying it as Lascari's lodging. Inside, they found a dimly lit reception area where a heavy-set woman with extensive facial augmentations regarded them suspiciously from behind a reinforced counter. 2 rooms, Irena requested, placing another payment disc on the counter. The woman picked up the disc, examined it with an implanted scanner in her eye, then nodded curtly. Connected or separate? Connected, Irena replied, before Rowan could speak. 3rd floor, units 12 and 14. Entry codes will transfer to your personal devices. The woman's augmented eye whirred as it focused on Rowan. You new here? Word of advice. Questions get people killed in Haven. Mind your business, and others might mind theirs. Thanks for the tip, Rowan replied neutrally. As they climbed the metal staircase to the 3rd floor, he whispered to Irena, "Connected rooms? I need to stay close to protect you," she explained, then added with a hint of dry humor. "Besides, I've spent centuries with people watching my every move. I've had enough of supervision." Their accommodations were Spartan but clean, a rarity in Haven, based on what Rowan had seen so far. Each room contained a sleeping platform, basic sanitation facilities, and a small food preparation unit. A reinforced door connected the 2 spaces. Once inside, Irena activated a small device that emitted a low hum. "Privacy field," she explained, "blocks most surveillance methods. Not perfect, but better than nothing." Rowan sank onto the sleeping platform, the events of the day finally catching up to him. In less than 24 hours, he had defeated the undefeatable warrior, become bound to an ancient power, and fled from the most powerful political entity in the galaxy. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Irena sat across from him, the chains beneath her sleeves glowing faintly in the room's dim light. "That depends on what you want. The binding gives you certain privileges regarding the key's power, but it also makes you a target. I came to Alterion for one reason," Rowan said, "to find a way to help Terralus. My people are dying under quarantine, abandoned by the alliance that promised to protect them." "Then perhaps we should learn why," Irena suggested. "The Council maintains secrets within secrets. The official reason for your world's quarantine may not be the true one. You think they lied about the Void Scourge outbreak?" "I think," Irena said carefully, "that whenever the Council acts with unusual decisiveness, there's often more beneath the surface. I've enforced their will for too long not to recognize their patterns." Rowan stood and paced the small room. "Even if that's true, how do we find out? We can't exactly walk into Alliance archives and request classified files." A smile ghosted across Irena's face. "Actually, we can. Not physically, perhaps, but the key offers alternatives." "What kind of alternatives?" Instead of answering directly, Irena held out her hand. "May I show you something? It requires physical contact." Warily, Rowan placed his hand in hers. The chains around her arms brightened, their glow extending to encompass both their joined hands. A strange sensation washed over him, like standing in a gentle current, energy flowing around and through him. "Close your eyes," Irena instructed softly. "The first time can be disorienting." Rowan complied, and immediately felt a shift, as if the floor beneath him had vanished. For a terrifying moment, he experienced the sensation of falling, before everything stabilized. When he opened his eyes, they were no longer in the sparse room on Haven. Instead, They stood in what appeared to be an enormous library, with shelves stretching impossibly high and far in all directions. The space was illuminated by a diffuse golden light that seemed to have no specific source. Despite the vastness, the air felt intimate, as if they stood in a small, private room. "What is this place?" Rowan asked, his voice sounding strange to his own ears, both near and distant simultaneously. "The repositories," Irena answered, still holding his hand. "A manifestation of the key's connection to knowledge. Not a physical location, but a way to access information across distances. We're not really here. Our bodies remain on Haven. Our consciousness experiences this representation." She gestured to the endless shelves. "Here, we can access any information that exists in connected systems, including Alliance archives." "How is that possible?" Rowan reached out to touch one of the books, surprised to find it felt solid beneath his fingers. The ancients built their civilization on the principle that energy and information are fundamentally connected. The key draws on that connection, allowing us to perceive and interact with data in this form. She led him through the impossible library, past shelves organized in patterns Rowan couldn't begin to comprehend. Finally, they reached a section where the books bore the distinctive insignia of the Alliance Council. "Here," Irena said, scanning the shelves. "Records relating to quarantined worlds should be in this section." Rowan followed her gaze, searching for anything referencing Terralus. After several minutes, they located a series of volumes dedicated to his homeworld. He reached for the most recent, but Irena stopped him. "First, we should check the original quarantine order," she suggested, "to understand how it all began." She selected an older volume, opening it between them. Instead of printed text, the pages glowed with moving images, recordings of council meetings, official communications, and field reports. 10 years ago, Irena narrated as they watched the documents unfold, Alliance survey ships reported the first cases of what they called the Void Scourge on Terralus. The initial assessment described it as a pathogen of unknown origin that caused neurological deterioration and eventually death. The images showed medical scans of affected individuals, dark patches spreading through brain tissue, causing seizures and personality changes before ultimate system failure. The council voted unanimously for immediate quarantine. Irena continued, turning pages that revealed the emergency session. All off-world travel was halted. Relief missions were to continue under strict containment protocols. But they didn't, Rowan said bitterly. The relief ships stopped coming after 6 months. Communications were cut. We were left to die. Irena frowned, moving to a later volume. That doesn't match the official record. According to this, relief missions continued for 3 years before being deemed too hazardous. They're lying. I was there. The last Alliance ship came exactly 184 days after quarantine was declared. We tracked every one, hoping for supplies, medicine, anything. Then we need to find what really happened. Irena's expression grew concentrated as she searched through more volumes. There's something strange here. Many of these records have been modified. There are inconsistencies, gaps in the documentation. She selected another book, this one bearing additional security markings. This is from the Council's restricted archives. Only the highest clearance levels can access these. As the book opened, a different story emerged. Internal communications revealed growing concerns not about a pathogen, but about unusual energy readings from deep within Terralus's crust. They weren't afraid of a disease, Rowan realized, reading the classified reports. They detected something beneath the surface, something that matched energy signatures found in ancient ruins on other worlds. Not just any energy, Irena said quietly, pointing to a specific analysis. These patterns, they're similar to the key's resonance. They thought they'd found another artifact, like me. Further pages revealed the Council's true decision process. The Void Scourge had been largely fabricated, a convenient explanation to isolate the planet while they determined how to extract and control whatever lay beneath Terralus's surface. They abandoned millions of people to suffer and die, Rowan said, his voice barely controlled, because they wanted to add another weapon to their arsenal. It's worse than that, Irena said grimly, turning to the final pages. Their excavation attempts triggered something, a defensive reaction from whatever lay dormant. The reports describe reality fluctuations and dimensional instabilities near the dig sites. After losing 3 extraction teams, they made the final decision. The last document was signed by all 12 council members, a containment order that went far beyond quarantine. Terralus was to be isolated indefinitely, with all records of the true situation classified at the highest level. If the instabilities spread, contingency plans included the option to destroy the planet entirely. My people aren't dying from a disease, Rowan realized, horror washing over him. They're caught in the fallout of something the council awakened and couldn't control. And they left them there, Irena concluded softly, as a buffer between whatever they disturbed and the rest of the Alliance. Rowan stepped back from the book, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the deception. His entire mission, everything he'd worked for, had been based on a lie. The Council had never intended to lift the quarantine. They'd been containing a situation of their own making. I need to go back, he said finally. I need to help my people. It will be dangerous, Irena warned. If these readings are accurate, whatever lies beneath Terralus may be as powerful as the key itself, and the Council will be watching for any approach to the planet. I don't care, Rowan said firmly. I came to Alterion to find a way to save Terralus. Nothing's changed, except now I know what we're really facing. Irena studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then as your bound guardian, I will help you. Her expression softened slightly. And as someone who recognizes the pain of imprisonment, I would choose to help you regardless of the binding. Before Rowan could respond, the library around them flickered suddenly. The shelves closest to them began to dissolve, golden light giving way to encroaching darkness. We're being traced, Irena said sharply, gripping Rowan's hand tighter. The Council security systems have detected our presence in the archives. How was that possible? You said this wasn't physical. It isn't, but they have ways to monitor access to classified information, especially anything related to ancient technology. The darkness continued spreading around them as Irena pulled Rowan toward what appeared to be an exit. We need to disconnect before they can lock onto our actual location. The library was disintegrating rapidly now, books falling from shelves and vanishing before they hit the floor. A high-pitched tone began to build, painful in its intensity. Close your eyes, Irena commanded. Focus on the feeling of your physical body. Rowan obeyed, concentrating on the sensation of the room on Haven. The hard sleeping platform beneath him, the recycled air, the subtle vibration of the station's environmental systems. The transition back was far more jarring than their entry had been. Rowan gasped as awareness slammed back into his body, nearly falling from his seated position. Across from him, Irena looked equally disoriented, the chains on her arms flaring brightly before dimming to their normal glow. We got out just in time, she said, her voice ragged. Another few seconds, and they could have traced the connection back to Haven. Rowan struggled to process everything they'd learned. The Council created a fake pandemic to hide what they found on my planet. They sacrificed millions of lives to contain something they couldn't control. His hands clenched into fists. And now they'll know we've discovered the truth. Which means we need to move quickly, Irena agreed. They'll be mobilizing resources to capture us with even greater urgency now. She rose from her seated position, moving to the small console in the corner of the room. Haven won't be safe for long. The Council has informants everywhere, even here. Then we find a ship, Rowan said, determination hardening his voice. And we go to Terralus. I need to see for myself what they uncovered, and I need to help my people. Irena turned to face him, studying his expression. The journey to a quarantined world won't be simple. Alliance blockades, automated defense systems, not to mention whatever awaits on the surface. I don't expect it to be simple, Rowan replied. But I didn't come this far to turn back now. A slight smile touched Irena's lips. Then for the first time in centuries, the key's power will be used for what it was intended, to protect, not to serve political interests. She inclined her head in a gesture that somehow managed to be both formal and personal. I stand ready, Rowan of Terrorless. I told you not to call me master, he reminded her. I didn't, she pointed out, the smile widening fractionally. But the sentiment stands. Where you lead, I will follow, not just because of the binding, but because your cause is just. As they began preparations for the journey ahead, Rowan found himself contemplating the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. He had sought only a chance to help his world, never imagining he would become bound to an ancient power, or to the woman who contained it. Whatever awaited them on Terrorless, he knew their path forward had irrevocably changed. The Council had made a grave mistake in their deception, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. Consequences delivered by the very weapon they had so carefully controlled for centuries. The countdown to confrontation had begun. Navigating Haven's black market proved easier with Irena's guidance. Within hours, they had acquired essential supplies: weapon modifications, shield generators, and specialized equipment for operating in potentially hazardous environments. Most importantly, they secured passage on an independent freight vessel, the Star Nomad, whose captain was willing to approach Terrorless's quarantine zone for the right price. He'll take us to the edge of the security perimeter, Irena explained as they walked back to their lodgings to collect their few belongings. From there, we'll need to use a smaller craft to slip past the automated defenses. Can we trust him? Rowan asked. Trust is a luxury in Haven, she replied. But Captain Voss has a reputation for honoring his contracts, if not alliance laws. And he has personal reasons to dislike the Council. Their conversation halted abruptly as they rounded a corner to find three armed figures blocking their path to Lascari's lodging. The leader, a tall, pale woman with silver, cybernetic implants framing her eyes, stepped forward. Irena Locke, she stated coldly. The Council sends its regards. Irena pushed Rowan behind her, the chains beneath her sleeves beginning to glow. Executor Kane, still doing the Council's dirty work, I see. And you've finally broken your leash, Kane replied, her augmented eyes scanning Irena with clinical precision. Though you've simply found a new master. Her gaze shifted to Rowan. Is he worth it? This, provincial from a dead world. Worth more than the Council ever was, Irena replied evenly. Leave now, Kane. You know you can't defeat me. The Executor smiled thinly. Perhaps not in direct combat, but I don't need to defeat you. Just delay you until reinforcements arrive. She gestured to her companions, who raised their weapons. Surrender the key, and the Council might spare your new master's life. Instead of responding verbally, Irena moved with blinding speed. The chains around her arms flared as she launched toward the trio, covering the distance between them in an instant. The first guard barely had time to fire before Irena was upon him, disarming him with a precise strike that left his weapon arm hanging useless. The second guard managed to discharge his weapon, but the energy blast dissipated harmlessly against the shield Irena projected from her chains. Her counterattack sent him crashing into the corridor wall with enough force to dent the metal plating. Kane proved more formidable, her cybernetic enhancements allowing her to anticipate and evade Irena's initial assault. The two women engaged in a blur of strikes and counters, moving so quickly that Rowan could barely follow the action. Run! Irena called to him between exchanges. Get to the ship. Instead, Rowan retrieved the fallen guard's weapon and took aim at the corridor's overhead lighting system. His shot connected, plunging the passage into near darkness, broken only by the blue glow of Irena's chains and the red targeting beams from Kane's ocular implants. The momentary confusion gave Irena the advantage she needed. A powerful combination of strikes drove Kane back, the final blow sending the Executor to her knees. Irena seized the opportunity to grab Rowan's arm and pull him toward an emergency exit. Reinforcements will be here any minute, she warned as they raced through Haven's back corridors. We need to reach the docking bay immediately. They sprinted through the settlement, taking indirect routes and maintenance passages to avoid potential ambushes. Twice they narrowly avoided Council patrols, ducking into shadows as heavily armed agents rushed past. The Council never deploys this many assets unless they're desperate, Irena observed grimly. They must be truly frightened of what we discovered. When they finally reached the docking bay where the Star Nomad waited, they found Captain Voss arguing heatedly with what appeared to be port security. There's nothing illegal about my cargo, the captain was insisting, his weathered face set in stubborn lines. Check the manifests all you want. It's not about your cargo, the security officer replied. Alliance agents have ordered a full lockdown. No ships in or out until further notice. Rowan and Irena exchanged glances from their position behind a stack of cargo containers. We need a distraction, Rowan whispered. Irena nodded, surveying the bay. There, she pointed to a fuel storage area on the opposite side. If we could trigger the alarm systems there, it might create enough confusion for us to board. I have a better idea, Rowan said, eyeing the security panel near their position. Can your chains interface with that system? Possibly. What do you have in mind? If you can access the station's security protocols, maybe we can fake a breach alert in another docking bay. Draw the guards away without actual destruction. Irena's expression showed a hint of approval. Less chaotic than my approach. Let me try. She placed her palm against the access panel, chains glowing as they established a connection with Haven systems. After several tense moments, alarms began blaring in a distant section of the station. Security breach in Docking Bay 12 announced an automated voice over the station's comm system. All personnel respond. Repeat, security breach in Docking Bay 12. The distraction worked perfectly. The security officers questioning Captain Voss immediately rushed toward the supposed emergency, leaving the way clear to the Star Nomad's boarding ramp. Captain Voss, Rowan called out as they emerged from hiding. The captain turned, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding as he recognized his contracted passengers. You're the cause of all this commotion, aren't you? He asked, though it wasn't really a question. We need to depart. Now, Irena stated. Voss sighed heavily. Of course you do. Why else would I be risking my license and probably my life? He gestured toward the ship. Get aboard. We're leaving as soon as I can get clearance overrides. They hurried up the ramp into the Star Nomad, a mid-sized transport vessel showing its age but clearly well-maintained. The interior was utilitarian but comfortable, with a lived-in quality that spoke of years traversing the galaxy's trade routes. Captain Voss joined them moments later, sealing the airlock behind him. Make yourselves useful, he ordered, heading for the cockpit. My regular crew abandoned ship when the Council agent arrived. Secondary systems need priming for emergency departure. Irena immediately moved to the engine control station, her hands working with surprising familiarity over the controls. Rowan followed Voss to the cockpit, strapping into the co-pilot's seat. You know how to fly? The captain asked skeptically. Basic training, Rowan admitted. Nothing fancy. Well, keep your hands off anything unless I tell you otherwise. Voss activated the ship's systems, which came to life with various whines and hums. And you might want to secure yourself better. This won't be a smooth departure. Through the viewport, Rowan could see security forces returning to the docking bay, having discovered the false alarm. Several were already pointing at the Star Nomad, whose engines were now visibly powering up without clearance. They're mobilizing to block us, Rowan warned. Let them try, Voss grunted, his hands dancing over the controls. Irena, I need those secondary thrusters now. Online in 3, 2, 1. Her voice came through the ship's internal comm system. Secondary thrusters engaged. The Star Nomad lurched forward, breaking free of its docking clamps with a screech of protesting metal. Security forces scattered as the ship hovered momentarily before accelerating toward the bay's atmospheric barrier. Are we just going to crash through it? Rowan asked, alarmed. Of course not, Voss replied, offended. That would tear the ship apart. He flipped a series of switches overhead. We're going to disable it first. A pulse of concentrated energy shot from the Star Nomad's forward array, striking the control mechanisms for the atmospheric barrier. As the shield flickered and failed, Voss slammed the thrusters to maximum, propelling them through the opening and into the swirling gases of the Veil Nebula. They'll be right behind us, the captain warned, navigating through the colorful cosmic clouds. Haven may be independent, but they won't risk council retaliation over two fugitives. The nebula provided temporary visual cover, but navigating its unpredictable electromagnetic currents proved challenging. Twice they narrowly avoided colliding with massive chunks of space debris hidden within the gases. "We need a clear path for the jump to hyperspace," Voss muttered, more to himself than his passengers. "Can't calculate coordinates in this soup." Behind them, the first pursuit. Vessels emerged from Haven's docking bays, lightweight interceptors designed for speed rather than firepower. "Irena," Rowan called over the comm. "We could use some help with our pursuers." Moments later, she appeared in the cockpit doorway. "Move," she instructed Voss, who glanced at her incredulously. "This is my ship, lady. Nobody pilots her but me." "I'm not asking to pilot," she replied calmly, "but I can give us an advantage. Trust me, or we all end up in council custody." Something in her tone must have convinced him, because Voss grudgingly shifted to allow her access to certain navigation controls. Irena placed her hands on the console, the chains beneath her sleeves beginning to emit their now familiar glow. The blue energy spread across the ship's systems like liquid lightning. "What are you doing to my ship?" Voss demanded, alarmed. "Temporarily enhancing its capabilities," Irena explained, her voice taking on that strange resonant quality Rowan had heard before. "The key's energy can interface with technology, augment it." The Star Nomad's sensor displays suddenly expanded, showing details of the nebula that their standard systems couldn't detect. A clear pathway through the cosmic maze appeared, highlighted in blue energy. "There," Irena indicated. "That route will lead us clear of the nebula in half the time, and the electromagnetic disturbances will mask our signature from long-range tracking." Voss stared at the new information, then at Irena. "What are you?" he whispered. "Someone who's paid you well," she replied simply. "Now fly." The captain didn't need further prompting. With the enhanced navigation data, he guided the Star Nomad through the nebula with increasing confidence, quickly outpacing their pursuers who still struggled with the region's natural interference. 16 minutes later, they emerged from the Veil Nebula into clear space, their pursuers nowhere in sight. "Calculating jump to hyperspace," Voss announced, his hands flying over the controls. "Where exactly am I taking you to, Trouble Magnets?" "Terrorless," Rowan answered firmly. "The quarantine zone." Voss's hands froze over the console. "You're joking. Our agreement was to take us to the edge of the quarantine zone," Irena reminded him. "That was before I knew we'd be outrunning council enforcers. Approaching a quarantine zone after fleeing Alliance authorities? That's not just illegal, it's suicidal." "We've paid enough to compensate for the risk," Irena said, "and I can continue to provide the navigational advantages you just witnessed." Voss glanced between them, clearly conflicted. The area around Terrorless is heavily mined and patrolled by automated defense platforms. Even with your enhancements, breaching that security would be nearly impossible. "We don't need to breach it," Rowan said. "Just get us close enough to transfer to a smaller vessel, one that might slip through." The captain considered this, then sighed heavily. "Fine, I'll get you within transfer range, but I'm not waiting around once you're gone. The first sign of council ships, and I'm jumping out." "Understood," Irena agreed. As Voss finalized the calculations, Rowan turned to Irena. "What was that? What you did with the ship systems?" "A minor application of the key's energy," she explained quietly. "It can interface with an enhanced technology, especially navigation systems. The ancients used it primarily for exploration, opening paths between stars that would otherwise be unreachable. Could it get us through the quarantine blockade?" She considered this. "Possibly, but it would require more energy than I used here. Such a significant application would be noticeable. It might draw unwanted attention, not just from the council." Before Rowan could ask what she meant, the hyperdrive engaged. Stars stretched into lines around them as the Star Nomad leapt into faster-than-light travel, carrying them toward a homecoming Rowan had once thought impossible. The journey to Terrorless took nearly 3 days, even at the Star Nomad's maximum sustainable speed. During that time, Rowan and Irena used the ship's secure communication array to gather what information they could about current conditions on the quarantined world. Official Alliance reports were sparse and heavily redacted, but by accessing less regulated information channels and occasionally employing Irena's unique abilities to bypass security measures, they pieced together a grim picture. In the decades since quarantine began, Terralus had descended into fragmented society. The initial outbreak of what the public still believed was the Void Scourge had claimed thousands of lives. But rather than a complete collapse, pockets of civilization had endured, adapting to increasingly difficult conditions. Most concerning were reports of reality disturbances in certain regions, areas where the laws of physics seemed to operate differently, where time flowed inconsistently, and where people sometimes simply vanished. These matched the classified council reports we saw in the repository. Irena observed as they reviewed a smuggler's footage of a shimmering air distortion that seemed to swallow a ground vehicle. Whatever they awakened beneath the surface is still active and possibly spreading. My father used to tell stories, Rowan said quietly, staring at the disturbing images. Legends from before the Alliance formed. About places on Terralus where reality was thin, where people would disappear only to return years later without having aged a day or aged decades in what seemed like minutes to them. Most worlds have such legends, Irena noted, but few have actual evidence. The ancients were particularly interested in places where the barriers between realities were naturally weaker. They often built their most important facilities at such locations. You think that's what the council found? Some ancient facility, or something the facility was built to contain, Irena suggested. The energy signatures are similar to the keys, but with notable differences. More unstable. Captain Voss interrupted their research, appearing in the doorway of the small navigation room they'd been using. We're approaching the outer marker of the quarantine zone. You should prepare for transfer. They followed him to the bridge, where the main view screen showed the distant star of Terralus's system. Around it, barely visible at their current range, orbited a network of satellites, the automated defense grid that maintained the planet's isolation. That's as far as I go, Voss indicated, pointing to a position just outside the grid sensor range. There's a maintenance shuttle in the aft bay. Not much to look at, but it has decent stealth capabilities. Might get you past the outer defenses. Thank you, Captain, Rowan said sincerely. Voss waved away the gratitude. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this out of kindness. But, he hesitated, then continued reluctantly. My brother was stationed on Terralus when the quarantine came down. Communications officer at the Alliance Embassy. They told us he died in the initial outbreak, but I never believed it. He was too careful, too prepared. Understanding dawned on Rowan. That's why you agreed to this job. I've tried for years to get information, Voss admitted. But the council classified everything about Terralus beyond standard quarantine protocols. If there's even a chance he's still alive down there. He trailed off, then shook his head. What's his name? I could try to find him if he's still alive. Corbin Voss. He'd be in his 50s now, if he's still around. Always wore this ridiculous medallion our grandfather gave him. Said it brought him luck. The captain's typical gruffness couldn't quite mask the emotion in his voice. If he's there, we'll do what we can, Rowan promised. As they approached the transfer point, final preparations began. Irena worked with Voss to program the maintenance shuttle with the most current data on patrol patterns and sensor blind spots. Meanwhile, Rowan gathered their supplies, carefully packing the specialized equipment they'd acquired on Haven. When a moment came to board the shuttle, Captain Voss offered one final piece of advice. The defense grid runs on automated protocols, but there are still occasional live patrols. If you encounter one, don't try to outrun or outfight them. These small craft have concealed maintenance compartments, barely big enough for two people, but they won't scan for life signs there. Noted, Irena acknowledged. And Captain, thank you. Just find my brother if you can, Voss replied. That's thanks enough. The transfer to the maintenance shuttle proceeded without incident. The small vessel, little more than a cockpit with minimal life support and engines, detached from the Star Nomad with a metallic clunk. Through the viewport, they watched as Voss's ship turned away, disappearing into hyperspace moments later. "Now it's just us," Rowan said, taking the pilot's controls. Despite his limited experience, the shuttle was simple enough to operate. "And an entire defense grid between us and your homeworld," Irena added, bringing the stealth systems online. "The real challenge begins now." Their approach to the quarantine zone was methodical and painfully slow. Every few minutes, they would pause, allowing the shuttle's sensors to scan for patrol vessels or active defense satellites. When a clear path presented itself, they would advance carefully before stopping to reassess. "This would be much faster if I used the key's energy to enhance our stealth capabilities," Irena observed after their third hour of this careful dance. "You said that might draw unwanted attention," Rowan reminded her. "Yes, but at this rate, we'll run out of oxygen before reaching the planet." She studied the sensor readings with a frown. "There's a gap in coverage coming up in approximately 12 minutes. It won't last long, perhaps 30 seconds. Can we make it through in that time?" "Not at our current speed. But if I provide a temporary boost to the engines, while simultaneously masking our energy signature." She left the suggestion hanging. Rowan considered their options. Continuing their current approach might be safer, but it also increased the chances of eventual detection through sheer exposure time. A quick burst through a temporary gap might actually reduce their overall risk. "Do it," he decided, "but only enough to get us through. No need to announce our presence any more than necessary." Irena nodded, placing her hands on the shuttle's control console. The now familiar blue energy from her chains flowed into the systems, creating a glowing network throughout the small craft. The engine readouts suddenly showed capacity far beyond their design specifications, while the stealth systems registered unprecedented effectiveness. "The gap will appear directly ahead in 3 minutes," she said, her eyes taking on that subtle glow that appeared whenever she channeled significant energy. "When I give the word, accelerate to maximum." Those 3 minutes stretched interminably as they drifted closer to the defense grid. Rowan could now see individual satellites through the viewport, ominous black structures bristling with weapons and scanning equipment. 10 seconds, Irena announced. 5, 3, 2, 1. Now, Rowan pushed the engines to their enhanced maximum. The shuttle leapt forward with acceleration that would have thrown them against the bulkhead, if not for the inertial dampeners Irena had similarly boosted. They hurtled between 2 defense platforms, sensors indicating active scans passing harmlessly through their enhanced stealth field. For 27 nerve-wracking seconds, they maintained this breakneck pace, covering distance that would have taken hours at their previous careful crawl. When Irena finally said, "Enough," Rowan immediately cut the engines back to minimal power. "Did we make it?" he asked, checking the rear sensors. "Yes," she confirmed, looking slightly drained from the effort. "We're inside the primary defense perimeter, but there are still orbital patrols to avoid." The remainder of their descent followed a similar pattern. Careful navigation punctuated by brief, calculated risks when Irena's abilities could provide maximum advantage. As they entered Terralis's atmosphere, the shuttle's exterior began to glow with the heat of entry, another potential signal to watching eyes. "I can mask our heat signature," Irena offered, though her voice suggested the effort would be considerable. "Save your strength," Rowan decided. "We're entering at a remote location, and atmospheric interference should provide some natural cover." The planet's surface resolved beneath them as they descended through thinning clouds, a landscape simultaneously familiar and alien to Rowan. The lush forests he remembered from childhood had receded, replaced by vast stretches of grayish vegetation that seemed to pulse with subtle, unnatural rhythms. Scattered settlements appeared as they flew lower, most surrounded by high walls or energy barriers. "Where should we land?" Irena asked, studying the terrain. "Do you recognize anything?" Rowan scanned the landscape, orienting himself by the distinctive mountain range to the north. "There," he pointed, "the Sarin Valley. My father's research station was located there before the quarantine." If any of his records about the ancient site survived, that's where they'd be. They adjusted course, heading toward a narrow valley nestled between jagged peaks. As they descended further, Rowan could make out what remained of the research facility, a cluster of prefabricated structures, some still standing, others collapsed. More concerning was the strange distortion in the air around the entire valley, like heat waves, but more pronounced, bending light in unnatural ways. That's a reality disturbance, Irena observed grimly. Much more severe than what we saw in the reports. Can we safely land there? Define safely, she replied with grim humor. The shuttle should function normally. Whether we'll experience time as expected once we exit, that's less certain. Despite the risks, they had few alternatives. Rowan guided the shuttle to a relatively flat area near the former research station, setting down with a jarring thump on the uneven ground. As the engines cycled down, an eerie silence enveloped them, broken only by the occasional ping of cooling metal. We should prepare before going outside, Irena suggested, retrieving their equipment. The environmental suits from Haven might provide some protection against whatever is affecting reality here. They donned the suits, full-body protective gear with transparent helmets and built-in atmospheric filters. Whether they would offer any real protection against temporal or dimensional distortions remained questionable, but they at least provided a psychological buffer. Ready? Rowan asked, hand poised over the airlock control. Irena nodded, the chains beneath her suit glowing faintly through the fabric. The key's energy appears to stabilize the distortion somewhat. Stay close to me. The airlock cycled open, and they stepped onto the surface of Terralis for the first time in a decade. The gravity felt right, and initial readings showed the atmosphere remained breathable, but everything else was subtly wrong. Colors seemed slightly shifted, with blues taking on purplish tints and greens appearing more yellow than Rowan replied. No one could have known I was coming. We only decided days ago. Unless time works differently here, Irena suggested. Remember the distortions we observed. What's days for us might be much longer for someone within the affected areas. The implications were unsettling, but they had few alternatives. Following the indicated route, they made their way deeper into the facility, eventually reaching a heavily reinforced door marked with symbols Rowan recognized from his father's research, pre-Alliance glyphs warning of danger and power beyond. The door, despite its imposing appearance, opened at their approach. Beyond lay a descending ramp leading into darkness, illuminated only by strips of emergency lighting along the floor. As they carefully proceeded downward, the reality distortions grew more pronounced. Occasionally, Rowan would see what appeared to be a ghostly figure passing through a wall, or hear fragments of conversations that seemed to come from nowhere. Echoes, Irena explained quietly. Moments from other times bleeding through. The barrier between realities is dangerously thin here. After descending nearly 100 meters, the ramp finally opened into a vast chamber carved directly from the bedrock. Unlike the abandoned research facility above, this space was clearly active, filled with sophisticated equipment, monitoring stations, and, in the center, a structure that defied conventional architecture. It resembled a doorway, but one that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. From some angles, it appeared solid. From others, it was a shimmering portal showing glimpses of impossible landscapes. Around its frame ran inscriptions in the same ancient language Rowan had seen on Irena's chains. More shocking than the portal, however, was the person standing beside it. An elderly man turned to face them, his weathered features breaking into a smile of recognition. Despite the passage of years, Rowan knew him instantly. "Father," he whispered, frozen in disbelief. Dr. Elcross, a man Rowan had buried in memory a decade ago, stood before them, very much alive but changed in profound ways. His eyes held an unnatural gleam, similar to what Rowan had observed in Irena's when she channeled the key's power. Around his wrist was a bracelet that bore uncanny resemblance to Irena's chains, though it glowed with a reddish energy rather than blue. "Rowan," the older Elcross said, his voice carrying the same resonant quality as Uranus. Right on schedule. I've been waiting for you. Or rather, I will have been waiting, depending on your perspective. He glanced at Irena with undisguised interest. And you brought the keys vessel. Excellent. This simplifies matters considerably. You're dead, Rowan stated flatly, still struggling to process what he was seeing. There was a funeral. I saw your body. A necessary deception, his father replied. The Alliance could not know what I discovered. What I'd become. He gestured to the portal behind him. This is what they sought to contain with their quarantine. The Nexus, a junction point between realities. The ancients built their facility around it, trying to harness its power. When the Alliance excavation teams found it, they had no idea what they were dealing with. Irena stepped forward, studying both the portal and Dr. Elcross with cautious intensity. You've been exposed to temporal flux, she observed. How long has it been for you since the quarantine began? Time is difficult to measure near the Nexus, he replied. By my best calculation, approximately 30 years, though I've experienced it non linearly. He turned his attention back to Rowan. For me, it's been 3 decades of preparation. For you, merely days since you defeated the vessel and claimed the key. How could you possibly know about that? Rowan demanded. Dr. Elcross smiled enigmatically. The Nexus shows many potential futures, many possible pasts. I saw the path you would take, from your victory in the arena to your discovery of the Council's deception, to this very moment. He extended his hand, the bracelet glowing brighter. And now, together, we can accomplish what I've worked 30 years to achieve, freeing our people from Alliance control permanently. By doing what exactly? Irena interjected, her own chains beginning to pulse in response to the energy emanating from Dr. Elcross's bracelet. By using the combined power of both artifacts, he explained. Your key and my seal. Together, they can stabilize the Nexus, allowing controlled passage between realities. Imagine it, Rowan. We could evacuate every survivor on Terralus to a world untouched by Alliance influence. A fresh start. It was everything Rowan had come for, a way to save his people. Yet something felt wrong. His father's explanation seemed too neat, his knowledge too perfect. If you knew I was coming, Rowan said slowly, why not contact me sooner? Why let our people suffer for a decade? The timeline had to unfold precisely, Dr. Elcross replied. If I'd interfered too early, you might never have sought out the keys vessel. Every moment, every decision led to this point. He stepped closer, his eyes intense. I needed you to bring the key here to complete the equation. Irena moved slightly, positioning herself between Rowan and his father. The key was never designed to interact with the Nexus, she said firmly. Its purpose is to stabilize reality, not bridge between different ones. You've been a prisoner of your own power for too long, Vessel, Dr. Elcross replied dismissively. You don't understand its true potential. The ancients limited you, just as the Council did. My name is Irena, she corrected, her voice carrying a dangerous edge. And I've guarded the key for millennia, long enough to recognize when someone seeks to use it for purposes beyond its design. The tension in the chamber escalated as Dr. Elcross and Irena locked eyes, their respective artifacts pulsing in what seemed like opposition to each other. Rowan found himself caught between them, between the father he had thought lost and the warrior now bound to him by ancient magic. Rowan, his father said, never taking his eyes from Irena, you must command her to cooperate. As her master, she cannot refuse a direct order. The word master sent an uncomfortable chill down Rowan's spine. I don't give her orders, he replied, and I'm not convinced your plan is safe. What happens to the rest of Terralus if you force open this portal? What happens to other realities if we destabilize the barriers between them? For the first time, Dr. Elcross's confident demeanor faltered. There are calculated risks. Some disturbances would persist, perhaps worsen temporarily. But the end result would be catastrophic, interrupted a new voice from the chamber entrance. They turned to see a middle-aged man entering cautiously, hands raised to show he carried no weapons. Despite never having met him, Rowan recognized him instantly from the family resemblance to Captain Voss. "Corbin Voss," Rowan said. "Your brother asked us to find you." The newcomer nodded, surprised. "Davin sent you? He's still alive out there?" "Very much so," Rowan confirmed. "Still captaining the Star Nomad." A brief smile crossed Corbin's face before his expression turned grave again. "Then I have even more reason to stop this madness." He addressed Dr. Elcross directly. "I've monitored your work for years, Professor. I know what the seal has done to you, how it's twisted your perception. This isn't salvation you're offering, it's annihilation." "You understand nothing," Dr. Elcross snapped, his composure cracking further. "I've seen the future, all possible futures. This is the only path that saves our people." "At what cost?" Corbin challenged. "You've experienced time non-linearly, but I've lived through these past 10 years in sequence. I've watched the distortion spread each time you've tested the Nexus. I've counted the dead and missing. Your experiments have already claimed hundreds of lives." Rowan looked to Irena, who had been silently assessing the portal during this exchange. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "The energy signature is wrong," she replied, her voice equally low. "It's similar to the keys, but fundamentally unstable. If the two were to interact, as your father suggests." She left the implications unspoken. Making his decision, Rowan stepped away from his father. "I can't support this, Father. Not without understanding the full consequences." Dr. Elcross's expression hardened. "I'd hoped you would join me willingly, son. But the Nexus must be opened regardless." He raised his arm, the seal's reddish energy flaring brightly. "If you won't command the vessel to assist, I'll have to take more direct measures." The energy lashed out like a whip, striking not at Rowan or Irena, but at the portal frame itself. The structure responded immediately, the shimmering distortion intensifying until the entire chamber seemed to warp around it. "He's forcing it open," Corbin shouted, bracing himself against a console as the ground began to tremble. Irena moved without hesitation, her chains blazing with blue fire as she channeled the key's energy to counter the destabilization. Where her power touched the distortions, reality seemed to firm, the chaotic wavering temporarily contained. "I can't hold it indefinitely," she warned Rowan. "His seal is drawing power directly from the Nexus itself, a feedback loop that will eventually overwhelm even the key." Dr. Elcross laughed, the sound disturbingly unlike his former self. "You see, it's already beginning. The barriers are thinning. Soon, we'll be free of this prison the owl."